No, it's not. I'm not interested in that. And I assumed wrongly that I would have the right to say no.
That's how Richard Everett, a landowner in Nelson County, says he responded when he heard Dominion Energy wanted to build a pipeline on his property.
But the very first letter and communication we got from Dominion said that they were coming to our property for a pre-condemnation survey. And if we didn't give them permission, they would take us to court and force their way onto the property.
It wasn't much later that Everett learned he wasn't the only property owner at odds over the ACP construction.
From the very beginning, they've come in like a bully and said, we'll do what we want.
And with that, he and his wife Jill hosted an Atlantic Coast Pipeline information gathering today.
This was a property we planned on building a sort of ecotourism experience on. We are sitting in the place that would be very close to a nice sort of found and forage tasting menu style restaurant and a series of cabins kind of nested at the edges of the property, really concentrated on celebrating how beautiful it is to be here and to live here.
Attendees came from as far away as North Carolina to discuss issues surrounding the ACP. Dominion Energy has cleared trees for the proposed pipeline in Nelson County at the entrance of Winter Green Resort. Still, Everett says,
we're winning. We're 4 years in and we're winning, which is a remarkable thing. I've always believed we could win, but I don't know that until recently it's been sort of blind faith and optimism. We now have very significant hurdles for them to cross, and I think we're just getting going.
His wife Jill says the gathering was about educating residents and informing them on where they stand in the fight against the ACP. The mother and aunt of 7 children living on the property says she lives in fear of the proposed pipeline.
One of the biggest things is I'm worried about having a 42-inch pipeline under 1,440 psi pressure being pumped through. I'm worried about the safety of my family, the blast zone, if there's any accidents, and we just had 2 recently. We're so close to the pipeline, we wouldn't survive, basically, if we were at home.
But she's not just fearful for her family, but for all those families and businesses which would be adversely impacted by the ACP.
Right now, we have the government saying, well, Dominion's project is better than yours, so we're going to let Dominion build their project. It's crazy. It should be illegal. I don't understand. I really don't understand. This is America, where the reason people are here, the reason we love it so much, the reason why we're so proud of it is because you can build your dreams. Your dreams can come true. Oh, unless you're Dominion and you say, we're going to do our thing here instead of yours.
Richard Everett opened the anti-pipeline meeting discussing eminent domain and how quick take violates due process.
Stopping the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is really important for us individually and for us as a community, or a broader community and state. It is just the beginning, because this pipeline is purely a symptom of a much, much bigger systemic problem.
More than 60 people registered to attend the gathering. 40 people were in attendance by noon. Another 20 or so were expected before the event concluded at 7 p.m. Among the speakers was Bill Limpert. I met Limpert and his wife at their Bath County home when they hosted a pipeline meeting.
It certainly is a threat to our property. It would cut down our old growth forest, never been cut virgin forest, for over 3,000 feet through the center of our property, all visible from our front porch.
He says there are other issues as well.
It would threaten our water supply, our well water. It would threaten our safety due to the number of existing landslides right close to the pipeline. Reduce our property value by 50%. It's a horror show.
Limpert worked for the Maryland Department of Environment for 28 years. He investigated and enforced erosion and sediment control on large construction sites. Limpert talked to the group about how outside storage of gas pipes deteriorates the coatings and increases the risk of failure, and the hazards of building on steep slopes.
I've looked at thousands of erosion and sediment control plans, and I can tell you with no hesitation whatsoever that the plans that have been approved for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, and what I also hear about the plans that were approved for the Mountain Valley Pipeline, the worst plans I've ever seen. A giveaway to the ACP and to the MVP.
Tom Hadwin is a former electric and gas utility executive. He says the ACP is owned by for-profit, unregulated companies. He added it is not designated as a utility in Virginia, West Virginia, or North Carolina.
The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission designates them as a gas company, and the lawsuits are handled at the federal level because of that. So the eminent domain is typically handled in federal court because it's easier for the company. There's no jury trial at federal court level, for example, but there are lawsuits against the ACP going on in federal court right now for a number of permits, and there's a challenge to the overall certificate happening in the DC Circuit of Federal Court.
Haddon was also among the speakers. His topic was why the ACP is not needed and gave Plan B scenarios. He says the pipeline lawsuits are based on having the proper certificates to build pipelines.
It challenges the entire certificate for the pipeline. The other permits that are being looked at federal court level are just for like crossing the Appalachian Trail or going through a federal forest or something like that. But the other is a challenge to the entire process by which the certificate was issued.
In Nelson County, Elaine Rackley for Breaking Through News.